"She's not that smart anyway," my sister said, as she held my daughter down. My 8-year-old was screaming through tears, watching 3 grown adults destroy the science project she spent 3 months building. Glue, food dye, a ruined volcano. My father stood in the doorway to block me. My mother called it a lesson in humility. That night, I scrubbed red dye off Emily's fingers while she whispered, "Do they hate me?" They thought they'd shattered her spirit. But I had photos, receipts, time-stamped logs, and exactly 2 weeks to turn their sabotage into something they'd never forget, and I would. My name is Laura Whitaker, and I'm 45 years old. I spend my days managing corporate documentation and my evenings helping my daughter Emily with her science projects. My parents, Richard and Helen, raised me to be invisible while my younger sister Sarah basked in their endless praise. Today, our small kitchen holds the sharp scent of vinegar and cardboard, science fair supplies scattered across the counter as Emily's neat handwriting labels each component. Mother's usual barbs about staying modest cut deeper lately, while Father's silence grows heavier whenever my capabilities surface at family dinners. What they don't know is that 15 years in regulatory compliance taught me to keep every receipt, photo, and time-stamped email. Emily's selection for the district science fair has shifted something in our family's careful balance. Some say blood runs thicker than water, but I've learned that love can be both loyalty and leverage. But let me start from the beginning. The kitchen became our workshop for 3 solid months. Emily and I fell into a rhythm. After dinner, we'd spread newspaper across the counter and dive into her volcano project. The dedication in that kid. You should have seen her meticulously labeling each cardboard layer with geological terms she'd practiced until her handwriting was perfect. Pumice, magma chamber, pyroclastic flow, terms that rolled off her 8-year-old tongue like she'd been born speaking them. I kept detailed logs of every vinegar baking soda test run, teaching Emily the importance of documentation. She'd measure carefully, adjusting ratios until the reaction was just right. Not too explosive, not too weak. The wire-reinforced cone took shape gradually, drying on our counter like some kind of scientific Christmas tree. You know that feeling when something's off, but you can't quite name it? That's how dinner felt when my parents came over to check on Emily's progress. Mother picked at her food, her smile tight as a drum, while Emily explained her project. "Let kids be kids," she said, cutting Emily off mid-sentence. "All this pressure isn't healthy." My hands clenched under the table, but I kept my voice steady. Sarah, my sister, circled the volcano like a hawk studying prey. "Those labels could use some work," she offered, reaching for them. "I tutor kids, remember? Let me fix these for you." I stepped between them before her fingers could touch Emily's careful writing. When the district invitation email arrived, my heart soared. Mr. Grant, Emily's science teacher, sent a separate note. "Emily's project shows remarkable promise. We're proud to have her represent our school." I printed both messages immediately, pinning them to my home office corkboard. Evidence, just in case. Old habits die hard. You could feel the family hierarchy groan like old floorboards when I shared the news at Sunday dinner. Father cleared his throat, steering the conversation toward Sarah's latest achievement. Some 7th grader she'd helped pass a math test. "Now that's what I call making a real difference," he beamed. Emily's shoulders dropped an inch, but her chin stayed high. I threw myself into preparation with the precision that made me good at my job. Travel checklists materialized on my phone. Spare glue and sealant found homes in a backup kit. Emily practiced her presentation in the living room, voice growing, stronger with each run-through. "The magma chamber stores molten rock under intense pressure," she'd explain, pointing to each labeled section. "When that pressure builds up," her eyes would light up every time. The night before the fair, I double-checked everything. The project room door clicked locked, another habit from years of protecting what matters. I took photos from every angle, documenting the volcano's perfect condition. My phone showed 10:47 p.m. when I set my alarm for dawn, planning one final measurement check. Past midnight, voices drifted from my parents' guest room, hushed but intense. A cupboard door thumped closed downstairs. My neck prickled. I moved my phone closer to the bed, cursor hovering over Mr. Grant's number. The house creaked its usual night songs, but something felt wrong. Sleep proved elusive as I lay there, mentally reviewing security measures and backup plans. I decided to wake up even earlier than planned. The volcano's measurements needed checking before anyone else stirred. Just as I was drifting off, the hallway light snapped on. A shadow passed beneath Emily's door. The hallway floorboard's creak shot me awake. I was already moving before my brain caught up, bare feet silent on the carpet as I crossed to Emily's room. The door swung open to a nightmare I'll never forget. My parents, and Sarah had Emily pinned to her desk chair. Mom gripped one small wrist, Dad the other, while Sarah loomed over the volcano with a bottle of red food coloring and Emily's school glue. Emily's face was streaked with tears, her mouth covered by Sarah's free hand. "What the hell are you doing?" I lunged forward, but Dad shifted to block me. "Get away from her!" Sarah squeezed the bottles harder, dumping both into the volcano's vent. The red dye splattered like blood across Emily's careful labels. "Just making sure it's fair for everyone," she said with a smirk I wanted to slap off her face. Emily broke free from Mom's grip and tried to reach for her project. "Stop it! Please stop!" The desperation in her voice shredded my heart. I grabbed for towels from Emily's bathroom, but the damage was spreading. The glue had already soaked into the cardboard structure, turning it into a soggy mess. My hands shook as I tried to soak up what I could. "She's too young to shine," Mom sneered, straightening her nightgown like she was adjusting a crown. "Don't make her arrogant like you tried to be." "She's not that smart anyway," Sarah added, capping the empty bottles with deliberate slowness. Someone had to show her reality. My phone was already in my hand, timestamp glowing. 2:17 a.m. I hit record, capturing the destruction. Their faces, their taunts. 20 seconds of pure evidence. The flash from my photos made them squint, but none of them moved to stop me. They were proud of what they'd done. "Get out," I said, my voice somehow steady despite the rage burning in my throat. "Get out of her room. Now." Dad planted himself in the doorway. "Laura, you're being dramatic. This is for her own good." I guided Emily to her bathroom, my arm around her shaking shoulders. The red dye had stained her fingers where she'd tried to stop the flow. I ran warm water, helping her wash away the physical evidence while the emotional wounds cut deeper. "Why would they do this, Mom?" she whispered as I dried her hands. "They're supposed to be family." Her voice cracked on that last word, and I had to swallow hard before I could answer. "Some people can't stand to see others succeed," I told her, carefully peeling away labels that hadn't been destroyed. A few were still legible, small victories in a sea of loss. But we're not letting them win. Back at the desk, I assessed the damage under my phone's flashlight. The once proud cone had warped, its internal structure compromised by the glue. What had been firm cardboard now sagged like wet paper. My hands trembled as I tried to reshape it, knowing it was futile. "The fair's in 6 hours, Emily said, her voice small but not completely broken. "What do we do?" I pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "We show up, we explain what happened, and we bring proof of what you really built." Working quickly, I transferred the ruined volcano into a plastic tote, careful not to cause more damage. The original photos from my documentation were already printing, crystal clear shots of Emily's perfect work. I drafted a brief, factual explanation for the judges on my phone, noting times, dates, and witnesses. Dawn was breaking as we finished, the first rays of sun highlighting the massacre of red dye and glue in the volcano's crater. Emily traced one of her surviving labels with a finger, and I saw steel replacing sorrow in her eyes. The gymnasium doors opened to that familiar science fair smell, floor wax and nervous energy, with a hint of baking soda from 24 other volcanoes. You know the sound, too, that steady hum of fluorescent lights mixing with parent chatter and shoe squeaks on polished wood. I'd been in places like this before, but never with stakes this high. Emily's hands trembled as we set up our station. I steadied them with mine as we carefully lifted the patched volcano from its tote. The crater still showed angry red stains, where Sarah's dye had soaked deepest, and no amount of emergency repairs could hide how the cardboard had warped. But we had our evidence lined up, my photos of the original build, Emily's detailed process log, even the pristine labels we'd managed to save. "Remember," I whispered, arranging everything just so. "They're here to see your method, not just the results." Emily nodded, but her shoulders stayed tight. The first judge approached. Mrs. Chen. I recognized her from the school newsletter. She had that practice-neutral expression all judges wear, but I caught the slight arch of her eyebrow as she studied our damaged display. Emily started her practice speech about layers and chemical reactions, voice surprisingly steady until we reached demonstration time. Instead of the clean eruption we'd perfected in practice, our compromised volcano burped out a thick green sludge. The food coloring had mixed with our carefully measured solutions, creating something that looked more like swamp water than lava. Mrs. Chen's pen scratched across her clipboard. "Did something happen to the structure?" she asked, gesturing to the warped sides. "We had an accident last night," Emily started, but her voice caught. I placed a hand on her shoulder, feeling the slight tremor there. Around us, other parents were whispering. I caught fragments. "Looked better in the school competition." And what went wrong? A mom from Emily's class, Thompson's mother, I think, gave me a look that mixed pity with something darker, like she was glad to see us stumble. Mr. Grant appeared at the back of the crowd, offering a subtle thumbs up when Emily glanced his way. That small gesture seemed to help her find her footing again. She launched back into explaining her methods, pointing to the documentation photos that showed what should have been. But I could see it hitting her, the difference between those pictures and our reality. With each polite nod from the judges, each carefully neutral "thank you," her head bowed a little lower. By the time the last judge moved on, humiliation had settled over her like a heavy blanket. "Let's get some air," I suggested, guiding her toward the exit. The morning sun felt too bright, too cheerful for the weight in my chest. I pulled a granola bar from my bag, the kind with chocolate chips she usually loves, but she just held it, wrapper crinkling in her tight grip. That's when I noticed the stain on her sleeve, a dark crescent shape that looked like someone's fingerprint in red dye. Physical evidence of last night's betrayal, right there on her favorite science fair shirt. Rage bubbled up fresh in my throat. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the video from last night. Family or not, they needed to face what they'd done. I typed out a quick text to my parents. "Meeting tonight after dinner. We need to discuss boundaries." Then I added Sarah to the thread, making it clear this wasn't optional. "Mom?" Emily's voice was small, smaller than I'd heard it since she was a toddler. "Does science still want me?" The question hit me like a physical blow. 8 years old, and already wondering if she should give up on her dreams because of other people's cruelty. I wanted to march back inside and demand every judge watch my video, show them all what real evaluation looks like. Instead, I knelt down to meet her eyes, those bright green eyes that usually sparked with curiosity, now clouded with doubt. I waited until after sunset to confront them. The house felt different in the dark, tighter somehow, like the walls were holding their breath. You know that feeling when you're about to strike a match and you can smell the sulfur before it ignites? That's what the air felt like. My phone sat innocently on the mantel, recording. They filed in like it was just another family meeting. Mom smoothing her skirt, Dad loosening his tie, Sarah checking her messages. Such ordinary gestures from people who'd done something so cruel. "I need to show you something," I said, pulling up the photos on my tablet. The timestamp glowed. In the corner of each image, 5:47 a.m., Emily's original volcano, perfect and ready. 6:13 a.m., the mess they'd made of it. Their faces didn't even twitch as I swiped through the evidence. Then I played the video clip. 20 seconds of crystal-clear footage. Sarah's laugh as she squeezed the glue, Mom pinning Emily's arms, Dad blocking the door. Emily's sobs provided the soundtrack. "This is ridiculous," Dad said, waving his hand like he could brush away digital proof. "You're being overdramatic, Laura, as usual." "Overdramatic?" My voice stayed level. Years of practice. "You held down an 8-year-old child while destroying her work." Mom's lips pressed into that familiar line of disapproval. "It was just playfulness, dear. We were trying to make it more colorful." She actually smiled, like she'd done Emily a favor. "A show-off brat needs to learn early," Sarah added with a laugh that scraped against my ears. "What? Did you think she was going to win some big prize?" I laid out 3 sheets of paper on the coffee table. "This is what you destroyed. 3 months of work, $47 in materials, and most importantly, Emily's trust in her family." "Oh, please," Sarah rolled her eyes. "She'll get over it." "I want 2 things," I continued. "A genuine apology to Emily and reimbursement for the materials you ruined." Dad stood up, his height meant to intimidate. "You know what? I think we all know you coached that kid. Probably did half the work yourself. How would the school feel about that?" The threat hung there, heavy as lead. My chest tightened, not from fear but from a kind of clarity. I'd expected better. Foolish, really. A small movement caught my eye. Emily stood in the hallway, clutching her stuffed fox, the one she'd had since she was 3. She'd heard everything, the look on her face. God, I wish I could unsee it. "We're done here," I said, retrieving my phone from the mantel. The red recording light blinked once before I stopped it. "Emily, honey, let's go upstairs." She practically ran to me, pressing against my side as we climbed the stairs. The lock on our bedroom door clicked with satisfying finality. Emily curled up on her bed while I opened my laptop. The email to Mr. Grant took shape quickly, direct and professional, asking about options. I hit send and waited. The reply came faster than I expected. The ping seemed loud in our quiet room. "Dear Laura," it read, "I anticipated you might reach out. The state fair pathway remains open. The application window hasn't closed yet. Let's meet tomorrow to discuss strategy. We have 2 weeks left." I glanced at the kitchen clock visible through our doorway. 9:47 p.m. Then my eyes fell on the fragments of Emily's volcano cone, still spread across her desk where we'd tried to salvage what we could. The email's final line stood out in bold. 2 weeks left. The science lab smelled sharp and clean at 7 the next morning. That familiar mix of iodine and ethanol that takes me back to my own school days. You know how certain scents just stick with you? Mr. Grant was already there, his coffee steaming beside a stack of forms. "Laura," he nodded, pulling out a chair. "I figured you'd be early." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as he spread out the state fair guidelines. My hands were steady now. Anger had crystallized into something more useful. Purpose. "The state committee actually encourages rebuilt projects," he explained, tapping a highlighted paragraph. "Shows persistence, scientific method in action. But everything needs documentation." And I mean everything. I leaned forward, pen ready. "Tell me exactly what we need." He counted off on his fingers. Revised hypothesis accounting for the first attempt. Video demonstration of each rebuild stage. Every receipt for materials. And, he smiled, teacher verification of independent work, which I'm happy to provide. 14 days, I murmured, pulling out graph paper. The squares helped me think. Always had. That's cutting it. Close. Deadline's firm. 5 p.m. on the 15th. Not a minute later. I started mapping it out, breaking down the rebuild into nightly sprints. The graph paper filled with precise blocks, foam-based construction, tube installation, mixture testing, weekend slots for full trial runs. Mr. Grant watched approvingly as I color-coded each phase. "Emily needs to see this broken into steps she can handle," I said, adding star stickers at key, milestones. "Small victories keep momentum going." Smart approach. He checked his watch. "Hardware store opens in 20 minutes. Want my supply list? Please. I was already reaching for a fresh sheet. Professional habits die hard. Every project needs a paper trail. The list grew: plaster cloth, modeling foam, chemical-resistant tubing. I added my own items: extra mixing containers, waterproof markers, backup batteries for the video camera. Mr. Grant's suggestions were gold. The man had coached science fair projects for 15 years. The hardware store was just opening when I pulled in. Morning sun caught the rain-streaked windows as I filled my cart. The cashier, Jenny, according to her name tag, raised an eyebrow at the quantity. Science project, I explained, managing a smile. Good luck with that, she said, printing the receipt. I checked the date and timestamp before tucking it into a labeled envelope. Every detail matters when you're rebuilding from ashes. Back home, Mother's theatrical sighs followed me up the stairs. I ignored them, just like I ignored the whispered phone conversation I could hear from her study. Let them plot. I had work to do. I cleared Emily's desk and set up our control station. Original volcano fragments on the left, fresh materials on the right. Emily's eyes lit up when she saw the new supplies. We're really doing this? She whispered. You bet we are. I showed her the calendar, pointing out the stars. One step at a time, honey. Today we're just building the base cone. Tomorrow we'll work on the internal chambers. She nodded, shoulders straightening. We mixed the first batch of plaster, my phone propped up to record. The kitchen timer kept us on schedule as Emily practiced her presentation. The ratio of vinegar to baking soda affects the force of the eruption, she recited, carefully measuring ingredients. Her voice was getting stronger with each run-through. We were testing the first seam when it happened. A thin line along the back split open during the pour. Red-tinted water soaked through our careful notes before we could grab them. The front door latch clicked. My eyes met Emily's. We both knew what that sound meant. Someone was home early. The next evening, my hair still reeked of vinegar from our failed tests. You know that sharp, nostril-burning smell that just won't quit? But I didn't care. We had work to do. Let's check those measurements again, I told Emily, spreading our revision notes across the kitchen table. The lattice supports were giving us trouble, but I had an idea about reinforcing them. Years of fixing office equipment had taught me that sometimes the simplest solution was the best. What if we cross-brace here? Emily pointed to our sketch, her finger tracing the inner cone. Smart kid, she was already thinking like an engineer. Worth a try. I grabbed our supplies and started cutting thin strips of modeling material. We'll make it stronger, but still flexible enough for the reaction. We worked methodically, me documenting every step while Emily assembled the internal framework. The heat lamp cast long shadows as our new cone took shape on the cookie rack. The kitchen timer kept us honest. Each layer needed exactly 20 minutes to set. Remember, I coached as Emily practiced her presentation, eye contact shows confidence. And what's your main takeaway? She stood straighter, chin up. Chemical reactions create measurable force that can be controlled through precise ratios. Perfect. I snapped a photo for the log, checking the timestamp. That's exactly what the judges need to hear. My phone buzzed. Sister's number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but experience said ignoring her would only make things worse. Hey there, Supermom. Her voice dripped honey-sweet poison. Just wondering if your little genius needs some tutoring help? You know, from someone who actually teaches? My jaw clenched. We're doing fine, thanks. Really? Because Mom says... I hit end call and turned, back to our work. The curing times were critical. We couldn't afford distractions. Ready for a test run? I asked Emily around midnight, when the house had finally gone quiet. She nodded, already reaching for the goggles I'd bought her. We mixed the solutions carefully, checking each measurement twice. Emily started her timer as I poured the vinegar. We waited, breath held. The reaction started promising but clogged halfway up. The eruption came out as more of a sad burp than the impressive surge we needed. Look, Emily pointed at the vent. It's too narrow at the top. She was right. The nozzle diameter needed adjusting, and that warped tube wasn't helping. I made the changes while Emily documented our observations. Want to record a quick demo for Mr. Grant? I suggested, seeing her enthusiasm fade. Show him how we're problem-solving? Her face brightened. She gave a fantastic 30-second explanation of our modifications, complete with hand gestures. That's my girl, resilient as they come. Father's voice drifted in from the hallway, probably talking to Mother. Becoming an obsession. Not healthy for either of them. I caught Emily's eye and tapped my ear, then shook my head. We had a signal now. Ignore the noise, focus on the work. Later, as Emily headed to bed, I marked day 5, complete in our project log. My finger traced Saturday's entry. Test full eruption, circled in red. 5 more workdays until then, 9 until the deadline. I was giving the cone a final check when I saw it, a hairline crack spreading along the base like a spider's web. Saturday morning hit like a punch to the gut. Know that feeling when you've been running on fumes and your body's screaming for rest, but your mind won't let you stop? That was me, mixing another batch of slurry, while Emily ran through her presentation for the dozenth time. The internal structure creates pathways that... She paused, frowning at her notes. Mom, is it facilitate or enable? Facilitate sounds more scientific, I said, checking the mixture's consistency. The kitchen counter had become our command center, scattered with measuring cups and safety goggles. Reminded me of my first apartment, actually. Same kind of organized chaos, same smell of determination and cleaning supplies. My phone buzzed. Cousin Janet this time. Laura, we're worried you're using Emily for attention. Maybe let her be a normal kid? Heat crawled up my neck. I took a screenshot, filed it in my growing family messages folder, and set the phone face down. You ever notice how criticism always comes from people who haven't lifted a finger to help? Mother's voice carried through the wall. She was on more speakerphone again, probably thinking I couldn't hear. Telling you, Janet, it's getting ridiculous. The school will hear about these stage mom antics soon enough. Emily's shoulders tensed. I gave her our signal, tap the ear, shake the head, focus on what matters. Let's protect our workspace, I suggested, grabbing the masking tape. We made a sign together. Do not disturb, curing in progress, and stuck it on the kitchen door. Emily added, little warning symbols in red marker. Not necessary, but it made her smile. Around 4 o'clock, we attempted our first near-full eruption. I held my breath as Emily added the catalyst. The reaction started slow, then built beautifully. The foam column rose straight and strong. Too strong, actually. It overshot our catch basin and splattered across the newspaper we'd laid down. But the flow pattern? Perfect symmetry. Look at that. Distribution! I high-fived Emily. The reinforcements are working. She beamed, already reaching for the cleaning supplies. Can we try again with a bigger tray? We adjusted the collection area and ran 2 more successful tests before dinner. Each one documented, time-stamped, logged in our project Bible. The validation felt good, like finally proving something I'd known all along. But midnight found me staring at our second cone, watching it slowly lose shape under its own weight. Fatigue hit hard, making my hands shake as I tried to salvage the structure. The kitchen clock ticked away precious minutes while Emily slept upstairs, trusting me to figure this out. Can't quit now, I whispered to the sagging volcano. What lesson would that teach her? Even as I said it, doubt crept in. Was I pushing too hard? Maybe Mother was right about... No, I sat in the dark kitchen, counting. Calendar squares for the 100th time. 10 days down, 4 to go. The state fair deadline loomed like a wall of stone. My thumb hovered over a draft message to Mr. Grant. Sorry we couldn't make it work. Emily learned valuable lessons about delete, delete, delete. The oven timer chimed. Day 10 sliding into history while I watched another cone fail. Somewhere in the house, a clock struck 1. 2 days left. The kitchen counter had become my mission control, with our final checklist taped front and center. Mom, I think I'm ready, Emily said, adjusting her safety goggles. Her voice had gained that quiet confidence I remembered from my own childhood victories, the ones before my parents learned to dim them. I nodded, double-checking the rebuilt volcano. This version was our masterpiece. Reinforced internal ribs, vent widened to exactly 22 millimeters, every measurement recorded to the 10th. You know how sometimes you can feel when something's finally right? That's what we had here. Let's time your introduction to the metronome, I suggested, pulling up the app on my phone. The steady tick-tick-tick filled our makeshift lab. Remember, strong opening, clear middle, confident close. Emily squared her shoulders. My project demonstrates the relationship between pressure and volcanic eruptions through a scale model. Her words flowed perfectly with the beat. We'd added a killer closing line. Understanding these forces helps us predict and prepare for nature's most powerful displays. Much better than the original ending, if you ask me. Camera ready? I position the tripod, checking angles. Deep breath, honey. Just like practice. The test eruption was textbook perfect. Foam rose in a controlled column, arced gracefully, and landed dead center in the collection basin. Not a drop wasted. I could have cried, but there wasn't time for that. Great job, sweetie. I saved the video file, immediately uploading it to the school's secure drive. Better safe than sorry, right? My cursor hovered over the send button for Mr. Grant's verification email. One attachment, clear subject line, State Fair submission, Emily Whitaker, final demo. While that processed, I assembled our documentation packet. Every receipt carefully dated, every iteration photographed, all bound in a professional presentation folder. The whole thing went into a waterproof sleeve, because after everything we'd been through, I wasn't taking any chances with coffee spills or accidents. Mother's laugh drifted through the wall, followed by Father's familiar scoff. Another performance, he muttered, loud enough to carry. Always has to make a show of things. I caught Emily's eye and winked. Let them talk. We had work to finish. The completed packet went straight into my work backpack, positioned by the front door where I could grab it tomorrow morning. I set 2 alarms on my phone, 6:01 a.m. primary, 6:15 a.m. backup. The submission office opened at 8 a.m. sharp, and I planned to be first in line. Come here, scientist, I called Emily over, kneeling to her level. Our foreheads touched, an old comfort gesture from when she was tiny. Tomorrow morning, we take it slow and steady. No rush, no panic. We've done everything right. She nodded against my forehead. What if they try to? They won't, I assured her. The packet's safe, the video's uploading, and… The lights flickered. Once, twice. My heart stopped as the router's lights blinked out, then slowly cycled back on. File transfer interrupted, my laptop chimed. The upload progress bar reset to 0. I forced my breathing to stay even, though my pulse was racing. It's okay, I told Emily, who had gone very still. We've got plenty of time to resend it. The file's still right here. The router lights steadied. I clicked upload again, watching the progress inch forward. 2%, 5%, 8%. Emily's small hand found mine, squeezing tight. We sat together in the dim kitchen, watching numbers climb, while somewhere in the house, a door closed softly. 4:10 p.m. on submission day, and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely type the email subject line. 50 minutes left until the deadline. The file size was massive. Every photo, every measurement, every second of footage we'd captured over these brutal 2 weeks. You ever watch one of those bomb-diffusing scenes in movies? That's what this felt like, watching that progress bar creep across my screen. 85%, 89%, 93%. Each percentage point felt like an hour. Come on, I whispered, willing the ancient school network to hold steady. No power flickers this time, please. No router resets. No mysterious technical difficulties. 4:14 p.m. The upload completed. I triple-checked the attachment, added our reference numbers, and hit send. My breath caught in my throat as I waited. 4:15 p.m. Mr. Grant's reply popped up. Received. Just that one word, but it felt like winning the lottery. I slumped back in my chair, finally letting out the breath I'd been holding since this whole nightmare started. The next morning, State Fair Day, dawned crisp and clear. Perfect weather for volcanic demonstrations. I could smell autumn in the air as we pulled into the parking lot, watch those red and gold banners snapping in the breeze above the exhibition hall. "Ready?" I asked Emily, unloading our materials with practiced care. She nodded, clutching her note cards. The confidence in her eyes made my heart swell. Inside, we found our assigned table, better positioned than I'd hoped for, right in the judge's main traffic pattern. I took my time setting up, making sure everything was perfect. The volcano sat precisely level. I'd brought my own bubble level just in case. Every hose clamp was checked and double-checked. Our documentation log, freshly printed and spiral-bound, lay open to the materials page. "They're starting," Emily whispered, watching the judges begin their rounds. 3 of them, moving methodically between projects, clipboards at the ready. I noticed small clusters of parents and students gathering to watch each demonstration. The judges were 4 tables away, then 3, 2. I gave Emily's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Just like practice," I murmured, reminding her of her opening line. She straightened her spine, and I stepped back to give her space. A small crowd had formed around our table by the time the judges arrived. I triggered the timed release mechanism right on cue as Emily began her introduction. The reaction started exactly as planned, a slow build at first, then rising steadily through the volcano's core. The foam column climbed, perfectly controlled, reaching its apex right as Emily explained the pressure, principles. Then it cascaded down in a textbook demonstration, flowing smoothly into the collection basin without a single splash over the edges. I caught movement in the crowd. Phones coming up to record the demonstration. 1 parent, then 3, then more. But my focus was on the judges' faces. The head judge was leaning in, clearly intrigued. The younger one was nodding along with Emily's explanation. The third made rapid notes on her clipboard. "And how does viscosity affect the flow rate?" the head judge asked, the kind of advanced question that could trip up even high school students. Without missing a beat, Emily launched into her response about magma composition and temperature variables. Every word clear, every concept solid. The practice sessions had paid off beautifully. My heart was racing as I watched the judges huddle together, speaking in low tones while comparing notes. The head judge kept glancing back at our table, then at his colleagues. Finally, he nodded and reached for the ribbon board they'd been carrying. The crowd around us had grown larger. I could feel the energy building as the judges approached our table again. Emily stood tall beside her volcano, hands clasped behind her back, waiting. Later that afternoon, my ears were still ringing from the announcement. First place in the junior division goes to Emily Whitaker! You know those moments that feel like they're happening in slow motion? That was one of them. My knees actually buckled, thank God for the table edge keeping me upright. Emily crashed into me with a hug that nearly knocked us both over, that bright blue ribbon clutched in her hand like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. "Mom, Mom, we did it," she kept saying, her voice breaking with joy. I couldn't even speak, just held her tight and tried not to completely lose it in front of everyone. The crowd around us had doubled. Parents were clapping, other kids were crowding in to see the winning project, and somewhere in the background I heard the distinct click of a camera shutter. "Excuse me?" A young woman with a press badge and notebook approached our table. "I'm with the school paper. Would you mind if I asked a few questions about your project?" Emily looked at me, and I nodded. "Go ahead, honey." The student journalist's first question was about the rebuild process. I handed over our documentation log, watching her eyes widen at the detailed entries and time-stamped photos. "This is incredibly thorough," she said, flipping through the pages. "Was there a reason you documented everything so carefully?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment, the choice between staying quiet and speaking truth. "There was some sabotage of the original project," I said carefully, keeping my voice steady. "We had to rebuild everything in 2 weeks." Her pencil stopped moving. "Sabotage?" "Yes. I kept my focus on the process, not the perpetrators." But Emily showed remarkable resilience. We documented every step of the rebuild to prove our methods were sound. The journalist was scribbling frantically now. A photographer from the local paper had drifted over, his camera already raised. Could we get a shot of Emily with her volcano during an eruption? We set up one final demonstration. The photographer captured Emily's proud smile just as the foam cascade reached its peak. Perfect timing. I could already picture how striking it would look in print. Back home that evening, I opened my laptop to check email. The local paper's website was already running the story. There was Emily's photo, right at the top, looking exactly as triumphant as I'd imagined. But it was the headline that made my stomach flip. Young scientist overcomes sabotage to win state fair. The comments section was already filling up. "Protect that kid," one reader wrote. "Family should lift, not crush," said another. "Who would sabotage a child's science project?" asked a third. The truth was spreading, carried by simple facts and public outrage. My phone buzzed. Mother's name appeared on the screen, followed by her voicemail. "You will call that paper immediately and demand a retraction. How dare you air family business in public? Call me back this instant." I took screenshots of everything. The article, the comments, Mother's message. Old habits die hard, and documentation had served me well so far. As I closed the laptop, a strange calm settled over me. The truth was out now, carried by Emily's success rather than my accusations. The public knowledge had shifted something fundamental in our family's power balance. My phone lit up again. This time it was my sister. "We need to talk. Now." I watched 3 more calls from her flash across my screen, unanswered. The house felt different somehow, lighter, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. The morning light hit different through our kitchen window. Maybe because, for the first time in weeks, I wasn't mixing chemicals or testing ratios before sunrise. I was just sitting there with my coffee, watching Emily draw little volcanoes in her cereal milk, when my phone started lighting up. First came the text from Jenny Chen's mom. She'd been one of my sister's star tutoring students for nearly 2 years. "Given recent events, we feel it's best to discontinue our sessions. Our family values don't align with certain behaviors." 3 more cancellation messages followed within the hour. You ever notice how quickly word travels in small towns? It's like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. My neighbor Rita called next. She's been on the church social committee with my parents since I was Emily's age. "Laura," she whispered, like someone might be listening, "I thought you should know. The committee had a special meeting yesterday. Your parents were asked to take a step back for a while, just until things settle." Her voice softened. "For what it's worth, most of us think you did right by Emily." That's when it hit me. The narrative had shifted. All those times Mother had called me obsessive for documenting everything. All Father's mutters about my unhealthy fixation with the rebuild. Now people were using words like protective and methodical. Funny how perspective changes when facts come to light. Emily looked up from her cereal. "Mom, should we forgive them?" I sat down beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Honey, forgiveness is complicated. First comes safety, making sure no one can hurt us again. Then, maybe later, if they show they're truly sorry and want to change, we can talk about repair. But safety first, always." The morning got brighter as I drove to school to meet Mr. Grant. I'd picked up a simple thank you card and had the newspaper article professionally printed and framed. He'd been our lighthouse in the storm. Seemed right to acknowledge that. Walking back to my car, I spotted Mother on the other side of the street. She saw me too, I know she did. But she turned her head away so fast you'd think I was Medusa. That old familiar ache started in my chest. But it felt different now, duller, more distant. Back home, I drafted the text I'd been turning over in my mind for days. To family, I'm setting clear boundaries going forward. Until there's genuine accountability for the science fair incident, our contact will be limited. The documented timeline of events, previously shared, stands as our record. Emily's well-being comes first. I'm open to discussion once you're ready to acknowledge the harm done and work toward repair. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then, I pulled out the small brass hook I'd bought earlier. Nothing fancy, just strong enough to hold what mattered. Found the perfect spot above my desk, right where the afternoon light would catch it. The shadow box frame I'd ordered arrived that morning. Simple black wood, conservation glass, cream-colored backing. The brass plate I'd had engraved was still wrapped in tissue paper. Everything ready, just waiting for assembly. I held Emily's blue ribbon up to the empty frame, checking the alignment. The silk felt cool against my fingers, that bright blue a reminder of everything we'd overcome. It wasn't just a prize anymore. It was proof that truth could outweigh power, that documentation could defeat denial, that doing right by your child could reshape the world around you. Standing there, measuring the space between the hook and my desk, I remembered another blue ribbon from 30 years ago. Mine had been for a history project, 3 weeks of research compressed into careful notes and color-coded tabs. Mother had called it showing off. Father had said I was trying too hard. That ribbon disappeared somewhere between dinner and breakfast. But this one would stay exactly where we put it. That evening, after Emily finished her homework, I unwrapped the shadow box materials on my desk. The brass nameplate caught the lamplight. Emily Whitaker, State Science Fair champion, with the date etched below. Perfect in its simplicity. You know those moments when everything just feels right? When justice settles in quietly, like dust after a storm? I positioned the blue ribbon against the cream backing, making sure it hung perfectly straight. Each gentle adjustment felt like setting a cornerstone. Emily perched on the edge of my chair, watching as I sealed the conservation glass in place. The satin gleamed under the desk lamp, that rich blue somehow deeper in the evening light. "Can I help hang it?" she whispered, and I nodded, lifting her up so she could guide the frame onto the hook. Together, we stepped back to admire our handiwork. That's when my phone buzzed, another tutoring client dropping my sister. In light of recent events, values misalignment, immediate termination. 7. Cancellations in 2 days. There went half her income, maybe more once word finished spreading. The mighty do fall, don't they? Sometimes all it takes is for the truth to finally catch up. Parents weren't faring much better. Rita had texted again. They'd been quietly uninvited from the church fellowship dinner. 3 decades of social currency, evaporating like morning dew. Turns out reputation is a fragile thing when you've built it on facades. I opened my laptop one last time and drafted the email I'd been composing in my head all day. To family, this documents our boundaries going forward. The documented timeline stands as our record. Emily's emotional safety comes first. When you're ready to accept responsibility and work toward repair, we can discuss next steps. I hit send, then turned to Emily, who was still studying the framed ribbon. "See that?" I said, pointing to her prize. "That's more than just a win, honey. That's a promise. That hard work beats jealousy. That courage outlasts cruelty. That truth finds its way to light." Her smile in that moment, God, I wish you could have seen it. I pulled out her memory book and snapped a photo of the framed ribbon, catching how the lamplight made the silk shimmer. Some moments you need to preserve, you know? Some victories need to be remembered. The laptop clicked shut with a satisfying finality. Spring air drifted through the window I'd opened, carrying the scent of new leaves and distant rain. The quiet felt clean somehow, like the pause after a storm passes. Emily's small hand found mine in the growing darkness. Together we stood there, mother and daughter, looking at that gleaming proof of everything we'd overcome. The brass plate caught the last of the lamplight as I spoke the truth we'd earned. No one dims our light without burning themselves.